I have here the palm of John Lennon. I also have a palm print as well, and from this it's possible to determine this is the palm of a musician, and I'll explain how I come to that conclusion. So how have I come to the conclusion that this is the palm of a musician? I mean, well, it obviously says John Lennon in the bottom left corner, but the simple answer, when we play musical instruments, particularly acoustic instruments, they require certain hand muscles. And so in a palm print in particular, this shows up because the third phalanges of the fingers appear particularly well developed, as well as the mounts as well. And it kind of creates this negative space just here in a palm print. And so this is one of the telltale signs of a musician in palmistry, at least with a palm print. You wouldn't pick this up so easily in a photograph, and this is just the beauty of a palm print. You find out completely different information, different indications. What is interesting, that even though we have here quite clear sort of negative space, we don't have the same for the third phalanx of Jupiter, and this shows that John Lennon was, we've got a clear kind of inferiority complex here with Jupiter not being quite high enough. Apollo is very high by comparison, and you see that in the other image, much more clearly. Apollo is very large, whereas Jupiter is very short. And again, the third phalanx of Jupiter is quite wide, and this is just classic. So we have here someone who's highly successful, talented, reputation matters. This is someone who's highly charismatic, but also is so driven that they're almost moving the goalpost. Every time they achieve something, they don't quite feel it was enough, and so there's another goal to set. And so there's never, they're chasing their own tail in terms of success and happiness. There's that constant need um, to to complete a new goal, but every time they do, they're never quite happy when they do it. Notice how the Mercury finger leans in towards Apollo, and in the print you can see it happens here as well, but also notice how the second phalanx of the thumb appears a little wasted, at least in the print. And these two combined show diplomacy skills, but also Mercury leaning in like this towards Apollo. Everything kind of seems to rely on Apollo. Apollo appears to be the strongest finger, and that makes sense. Mercury, the ability to communicate, is relying on those skills and those talents, that creativity. The fingers themselves are quite splayed far apart, and this shows someone who's an ideas person, who's far-reaching in their thoughts. They're a bit of an extrovert. They're not afraid to put their thoughts and ideas out there once they've kind of received them. They are what's the word, sociable. And also notice the shape of the palm. It's kind of wider at the base. This is an air hand, an ideas person, an intellectual, a debate type of person who enjoys a puzzle, a documentary, learning and absorbing information. But the broad kind of based spatulate palm shows someone who is interested in creating new rules. This is someone who is interested in reading the rule book, but then creating new rules, deciding and rewriting those rules, and is not quite happy until they found something that they can change and make better and improve upon. And so this is certainly someone who would be looking to do that through their music, and you can see that the tip of Mercury is very well developed. In fact, all of the tips of the fingers are well developed, and this shows someone who's quite spiritual. And this actually, this Jupiter finger in general, the shortness of it, firstly, yes, it's an inferiority complex, but it's not stunted. A severe inferiority complex looks like this, whereas actually this one that's probably not a good representation. It's a bit pointy, and it shows that this is someone who likes to teach. And so, this in combination with this diplomacy, wanting to create new rules, learn, and then create new ways of thinking. This is a teacher, but a spiritual one, and someone who's communicating through their creative ability. So all of these things combined, it kind of shows this is more than just a musician. This is some sort of a spiritual leader. Now, actually, this is quite a similar hand in a lot of ways, at least Jupiter finger, to Gandhi's Jupiter finger. Gandhi had a very short Jupiter finger, a severe inferiority complex, but it also shows someone who has actually quite a reduced ego. Reputation matters to this person, but their feeling about where they are in the world, in the universe, is actually quite small. They have this feeling that they are quite insignificant in a lot of ways. So that's really interesting. The level of ideas that this person has is the same, is even with their willpower. There's a very strong amount of will here. That's actually a bit of a temper, uh, possibly, but this adds to the kind of passion that this person has about how they feel about um, world affairs themselves, in that where they fit in that picture as well. And it's likely this person took things out on beat themselves up quite a lot. They're quite highly critical of themselves, perfectionist probably, and that's also seen by a far-reaching headline as well. The thumb is low set as well, and that shows a bit of a humanitarian, and especially this kind of long, sweeping heart line. Luna is incredibly well developed, and that goes without saying. This person's bank of creativity, their well of creative thoughts and ideas was extreme, and it does appear as though this person has a Mars line running alongside a very busy life line. And I'm not going to be able to go too deep into the chirology of this just because I don't really have the clarity here, but it does seem that there is a lot of assistance guiding this person through their journey. A Mars line is sometimes referred to as a guardian angel line, and it's said that most of us have someone looking out for us, looking over us on the other side. And that's for some what this line represents. Others who are less kind of cosmic and spiritual in terms of interpreting this line see it as more of assistance in helping through situations where physical trauma might be. It's like a strong immune system, and that's what it's an indication of, a strong vitality and constitution. And so when we go through something that might harm us, this Mars line helps us. And when we see the line kind of weaken, it's from this point onwards we need to start taking a much more care about our health and think about our safety as well. And on that note, John Lennon's palm, it really is the hand of someone who is quite impulsive and potentially even a little bit reckless. As I say, there is a bit of an anger issue there. And although this is probably directed inwards, this is the palm of a gambler, actually, because you've got this very shortened Jupiter finger, a very long Apollo finger, and this in conjunction with a headline and a lifeline that start separate to each other, and you can only just see it in this picture here. This is the only picture I could find where we can get some real clarity of the lines. You can see here where the beginnings of these lines are in the palm, where they begin just above the thumb, and you can see when a person's lifeline and their headline are detached. It's not necessarily a bad thing, the pros and cons, but it does represent someone who is their thoughts are not connected with their life. It shows an impulsiveness, impatience, but it also shows an ability to think outside of their environment, and so it shows a radical thinker. So as I say, pros and cons, but this is an impulsive person, someone who is known as the mark of the tiger in Indian palmistry. So it's someone who jumps in, they think before they act, sorry, before they think. And so you can see that here, not clearly in this image, but in the other image just about. Unfortunately, we don't really have the clarity here in this image, but we do have the other signs, and that's the long and strong Apollo, a short Jupiter as well. And that in conjunction with the disconnect between the life and the headline these are the signs of a gambler, not necessarily with money, but in his actions. Perhaps he speaks before he thinks, or did, and acted before he thought, and had a lack of care for the consequences of his actions. And perhaps this led to his assassination, some might think. The large gap here seen between Jupiter and Saturn shows quite clearly a lacking of a father figure whilst growing up, and that's always seen with a very low set Mercury. Mercury is still on the long side though, and that shows, even though this lack of clearly a needed parental figure during latency, it hasn't stunted this person's ability to communicate. And with Mercury leaning in towards Apollo, this a low set of Mercury shows not emotional instability, but it shows emotional an inability to articulate emotions, an inability to express emotions. And so with Mercury leaning towards Apollo, it shows that they rely on their creative talents to express emotionally almost. This creative outlet has been extremely healthy in the development of this person's ability to communicate and strengthen those communication skills. And what is clear to see here in this image is the Mercury line itself is incredibly strong. And, that shows obviously this person's intuition is strong. Their unconscious side is very strong in itself. This charisma is strong, Neptune is strong, Luna strong. These are all the classic signs of a celebrity, this talent and charisma combined. But the strong, the well-developed Luna, almost overdeveloped, shows creativity, but their unconscious side is strong. This person is very in touch with their dreams, their imagination, and this ability to conjure up melodies comes from a place that's very unconscious, and this person is very tapped into that and able to understand a part about their uh, brain, their thought patterns that most are not as in touch with. Most of us we live in a very sort of conscious world. We're either awake or we're asleep, but the asleep part's kind of irrelevant. We're not in touch with half of our lives, so to speak, because we forget. But for some of us, we're much more in touch with our dreams, and John Lennon certainly was. He was much more in touch with his unconscious side of his life, his brain, his mind. Now, a strong tip of Mercury that leans in like this, and it appears as though it's large. It's like a teardrop, and it points in towards Apollo. This is always seen in someone who is a very able persuader. So all of these things, all of these traits, these characteristics and skills, this personality, the charisma, the ability to captivate and hold an audience with this strong Neptune as well, it shows this is a person who is able to lead and drive, but lead by example. If we saw someone with a longer Jupiter finger, we'd be seeing someone who led more with ideas, but this is someone who was very capable and willing to lead by example and persuade others in his actions as well. And potentially this is actually the palm of quite a fierce political leader or activist had this person had the opportunity. This really is, just look at the length of Apollo there in conjunction with Jupiter, and that's the classic hand of a gambler there. So it's entirely possible John Lennon was leading by example and frustrating a lot of very powerful people, and these are potentially the reasons that led to his death. It's not really possible, unfortunately, to see much more from this person's palms in these images. Unfortunately, I just don't have the clarity. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Perhaps not the most detailed reading this Sunday, but I think there's some things that are quite interesting here and quite telling. This is a spiritual leader, a teacher, an activist, a creative humanitarian, and revolutionary. Clearly a very gifted musician. I hope you've enjoyed this reading. Let me know what your thoughts are, and thanks for watching. And Happy New Year, everyone. And I will see you in the new year for some more random palm readings and some more case studies every Sunday. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.